It is becoming increasingly clear that the question was never whether Prince Harry and Meghan Markle need a way back to the royal family, but whether the royal family knows how to move forward without them. Because what we are witnessing is not an institution grieving a broken relationship, but an institution struggling with the loss of control. And that distinction matters more than many people are willing to admit, because when Harry and Meghan stepped away, they did not just leave titles and duties behind. They disrupted a centuries-old system that depends on obedience, silence, and managed narratives. And for the first time in modern royal history, a senior royal chose his family's safety and mental health over institutional loyalty, exposing cracks that had always been there but were carefully hidden behind ceremony and tradition. The royal family does not mourn Harry as a son or brother who chose a different life. They mourn the version of Harry they could manage, the spare who stayed in line, absorbed public criticism quietly, and played his role without asking uncomfortable questions. And that is why the reaction has been so cold, so rigid, and so emotionally detached, because grief would suggest love, whereas control suggests possession. And Harry's decision to leave stripped the institution of its authority over his voice, his wife, and his children. What makes this reality particularly heartbreaking is that Harry himself has openly spoken about still loving his family and still hoping for reconciliation. Yet reconciliation requires accountability. And accountability is something the royal family has consistently avoided when it comes to the harm inflicted on Meghan, and by extension, on Harry and their children. The tactics used against Meghan were not new. They were recycled, refined, and weaponized versions of the same strategies once used against Princess Diana: the selective leaking to the press, the calculated silence when false narratives spread, the expectation that the woman should endure public humiliation for the sake of the institution, and the subtle implication that if she struggles, the problem lies with her rather than with a system that dehumanizes those who marry into it. What is most disturbing is that these tactics did not stop with Meghan. They extended to Harry, to Archie, and even to Lilibet, innocent children who became collateral damage in an institutional power struggle. And when a family allows that level of exposure and hostility to surround its youngest members, it stops being about tradition and starts being about negligence. Had Harry and Meghan not left when they did, it is not dramatic to say their lives were in danger, because history had already shown what happens when the monarchy prioritizes image over protection. And Harry, having lost his mother in circumstances shaped by media obsession and institutional indifference, was never going to repeat that cycle, no matter how much pressure was applied. The royal family's inability to protect Meghan from racist undertones, relentless tabloid attacks, and internal isolation speaks volumes, because protection was always possible when the will existed. And the fact that it was not extended equally reveals an uncomfortable truth about whose well-being is deemed expendable. Since their departure, the monarchy has appeared oddly frozen, unable to adapt, unable to modernize authentically, and unable to tell its story without constantly orbiting around the absence of Harry and Meghan, which raises an important question. If the institution is as stable and forward-looking as it claims, why does it seem so unsettled by two people choosing independence? The answer may lie in the fact that Harry and Meghan represent a future the monarchy does not know how to control, one that values transparency over secrecy, mental health over endurance, and personal agency over inherited obligation. And rather than learning from this, the institution has chosen to frame their departure as betrayal, thereby absolving itself of introspection. The constant briefings about potential returns, olive branches, or reconciliations feel less like genuine attempts at healing and more like strategic distractions, because reconciliation without reform would simply place Harry and Meghan back into a system that has already demonstrated its willingness to sacrifice them, and that is not reconciliation, it is regression. The royal family's apparent struggle to move on is not rooted in love or loss, but in the destabilization of its narrative authority, because Harry and Meghan's willingness to speak openly shattered the illusion that silence equals dignity. And once that illusion was broken, the institution could no longer rely on its traditional methods to manage public perception. What we are seeing now is an institution that needs Harry and Meghan more than it is willing to admit, not for emotional reasons, but for relevance, because their global appeal, humanitarian focus, and cultural resonance highlighted how out of touch the monarchy has become with modern values. Instead of embracing this evolution, the royal family chose defensiveness, and in doing so, revealed a profound inability to adapt to a world that no longer accepts unquestioned authority. Harry and Meghan did not destroy the monarchy. They exposed its vulnerabilities, and exposure is only dangerous to systems that refuse to change. The idea that Harry must return to be forgiven ignores the fact that forgiveness implies wrongdoing, and choosing safety, dignity, and autonomy is not wrongdoing, it is self-preservation. And the more the royal family clings to the notion that Harry owes them compliance, the clearer it becomes that the institution has learned nothing from the pain it helped create. This is not a story about rebellion. It is a story about boundaries, and the monarchy's discomfort with boundaries reveals just how accustomed it has been to unchecked influence over the lives of those within it. The tragedy is not that Harry and Meghan left. The tragedy is that they had to leave to survive. And the most telling aspect of this entire saga is that rather than reflecting on why two senior royals felt unsafe enough to walk away, the institution continues to focus on optics, legacy, and control, proving that it is not Harry and Meghan who need a way back, but a royal family that needs to find a way forward without demanding submission as the price of belonging.